Hello everyone, my name is Alexander Moraine. My colleague Elise Glazer and I are presenting the research paper titled Comparing Automatically Extracted Topics from Online Suicidal Ideation and the Responses They Invoke. We worked alongside Dr. Jonathan Gemmel as a part of the 2019 Medics REU experience at DePaul University. Mental health issues are a widespread and important public health concern today. One of the most prevalent of these concerns are suicidal ideation. According to the CDC, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in 2017, and the second leading cause of death for individuals between the ages of 10 to 34. In 2017, 47,173 Americans died by suicide, while over 1.4 million Americans attempted it. Clearly, there is a need to further support the prevention and treatment of this disease. In our research, we propose a method to characterize the language of individuals afflicted with this disease. In doing so, we can better our understanding of these mental health issues and further progress in treatment and prevention efforts. In order to provide an archetype of the language of these mental health concerns, we need access to a dataset of authentic language from individuals who are afflicted. Social networks have seen significant growth in popularity in recent years. According to Pew Research Center, social media usage has risen from just 5% of the population in 2005 to 72% in 2019. Reddit has become an increasingly popular outlet for those suffering from these mental health issues to discuss their experiences. In 2019, Alexa rated Reddit as the 6th most popular website in America and 18th most popular worldwide. Many subreddits exist for conversation concerning specific topics such as mental health. These forums are overseen by moderators to ensure appropriate content and contains thousands of posts by users who describe their personal experiences with mental health issues. Our work looks at one particular subreddit, r/Suicide Watch. This subreddit has garnered over 148,000 subscribers since its creation in 2008. The subreddit is devoted to discussion of personal accounts of suicidal ideation and is well moderated to prevent other content from being posted. We analyzed both posts and response within the Suicide Watch subreddit for discussion of suicidal ideation. By applying natural language processing to these subreddits, we can identify distinctive trends in the colloquial language of each forum, offering new insights on the archetypes of these diseases. Our work is grounded heavily in Word2Vec, a word embedding software developed by Thomas Mikolov. Word2Vec utilizes a shallow neural network to link words to vectors in n-dimensional space. The closer the words are to each other in this vector space, the more closely associated they are in semantic and syntactic meaning. Using this work, we can extract interesting language patterns from the Suicide Watch subreddit that directly relate to suicidal ideation. Work in this area was done previously for automatic extraction of topics in the subreddit Suicide Watch. In this study, topics automatically extracted from Suicide Watch posts were then mapped to risk factors commonly associated with suicidal ideation. Our work will focus on providing archetypes of the language of both posts and responses in the same subreddit, so as to better characterize differences in language patterns between those directly afflicted with suicidal ideation and those responding to them. To better understand how we produce these language archetypes, let's go through a brief overview of the methodology behind our work. First, we scraped Reddit using an API provided by Jason Baumgartner. Next, we select a subreddit for analysis. In our case, we chose to analyze both the posts and responses in the subreddit Suicide Watch. Some pre-processing is done to subreddit selections prior to entering them into the Word2Vec algorithm. One of the key steps in this pre-processing is the use of a phraser tool to generate bigram and trigram phrases to add to our dataset, so as not to lose the meaning of words commonly used in phrases. An easy example of this is the words New and York not having the same meaning singularly as New York. After selecting and pre-processing our subreddits, we then generate a Word2Vec model that embeds the words in all the subreddits into vector spaces. We then perform k-means clustering, a way of grouping words that are close in vector space to determine topics in the subreddits. After this, we use some simple matrix multiplication to determine the relative distribution of topics used in both posts and responses in the Suicide Watch subreddit for easy comparison. Using the topics again, we also mine association rules between clusters, which is a way of relating how often two topics come up together, and how likely one topic will be seen if another is already present. Now let's take a look at some of the results we found. Depicted here is a graph of the topic distributions of the posts and comments in the subreddit r/suicidewatch. This graph depicts the relative usage of each of our 100 clusters or topics in the posts and the responses, shown in blue and red respectively. Essentially, this graph is showing the relative amount that a topic shows up within the posts about suicidal ideation in comparison to how much it shows up in the direct responses to these types of posts. This helps get a better understanding of the language used by users within these two categories. The first peak that catches our attention is Cluster 32, a group of words that occurs often in both posts and responses. The most frequently used words in this cluster are I'm, don't, like, know, want, feel, people, would, really, and one. The words in this cluster are fairly generic and commonly used words in the English language. We would expect this to be fairly even and high in both categories, which is what we see. We were most interested in clusters that heavily favored one category over the other. When looking at Cluster 69, we see top words such as talk, please, ill, hey, listen, hang, here, PM, tonight, and wanna. The words in this cluster surround the initiation or offer for conversation between two users. It should be noted that PM is a common colloquialism for a private message. This provides evidence that responders are more likely to offer to listen to or have a one-on-one conversation with other users. Offering community support or connectedness is one of the Center for Disease Control's defined protective factors against suicide. This data suggests that the responders in this forum are utilizing some of the protective factors, whether intentional or otherwise. When looking at Cluster 53, we see that it contains top words such as live, nothing, end, kill, die, suicide, living, death, happen, and killing. This cluster clearly seems to be associated with death and suicide, things commonly discussed directly by those afflicted with suicidal ideation. As we can see, the cluster is more commonly used than an average cluster in both the responses and posts, as this is a very common topic of discussion in a forum for suicidal ideation. However, the cluster is used far more by users posting about their experiences with suicidal ideation than those responding to them. This could be attributed to the originating posts being pleas for help with these issues, while responses are more often expressions of support. Here we highlight a few other clusters which saw a contrast in usage between posts and response. These clusters are shown again in this figure, along with the topics they describe. On the vertical axis, we see the topics represented by clusters in our graph. And on the horizontal axis, it shows us the relative percent frequency of how much each topic was used in the posts and responses. A few key trends here emerge. Many of the topics that favor the original posts are representative of risk factors for suicide. This includes financial issues like job loss or debt, depressive symptoms, feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness, and direct discussion of death and suicide. Meanwhile, many of the topics that occur more frequently in responses are highly representative of protective factors for suicide. These are factors that reduce a person's risk of suicide and include topics like receiving medical care or having a sense of connectedness, which we believe is represented by the topics that surrounds offering to have private conversations in the responses. We also notice that most of the language in positive sentiment occurs in the responses. Even while both posts and responses discuss school, responses focus on subjects and academic interests, while posts focus more on poor performance.
We previously touched on one of the CDC's outlined protective factors against suicide. The CDC defines protective factors against suicide into 4 categories. These categories include encouraging clinical care, proactivity in communication, encouraging positive lifestyle changes, and sympathetic and hopeful sentiment. Encouraging clinical care includes suggesting contact with a mental health professional or providing resources such as suicide hotlines. It is specified for high-risk individuals who have specified a plan for suicide. Proactivity in communication involves offering social support that is proactive in listening to and conversing with a suicidal individual. This includes making oneself available and being pointed and specific with methods of contact. Encouraging positive lifestyle changes describes responses related to improving the lifestyle or coping mechanisms that a suicidal individual employs. This can include providing advice on diet, exercise, sleep, and other areas of one's lifestyle. The final protective factor is sympathetic and hopeful sentiment. This involves responses being sympathetic, hopeful, and non-judgmental to an afflicted individual's situation. This language can help to increase an afflicted individual's feelings of optimism and motivation towards their current situation. Here, we focus on the response topics that encourage getting professional help. Receiving support from a mental health professional is cited as a key protective factor against suicide. Both the topic discussing local resources and the topic discussing mental health professionals found in the responses had a significant association with the topic directly discussing suicide in the posts. This means that when posts use language that describe the act of suicide, they are more likely to receive responses that encourage receiving clinical care. A sense of connectedness with others or within a community is another protective factor against suicide. We focused on the response topic that we believed encouraged connectedness through proactivity in communication, with words suggesting private messaging and availability to talk. This topic had a significant association with the 3 clusters seen here, which include negative descriptive language, poor performance in school, and personal relationships. We believe this shows that initiating a conversation is used as a response to a variety of suicidal posts, and in particular appears to be more associated with posts that describe personal details like dropping school or difficulty with relationships. The third protective factor we looked at was lifestyle changes and coping skills. We identified 2 topics within the responses that appear to encourage both positive lifestyle changes, one that discusses exercise, diet, and relaxation, and another that discusses meaningful activities with words like hobbies, games, and music. The topic within the post that was indicative of low motivation had a significant association with both of these response topics, and the topic describing negative feelings like sadness, anger, and anxiety was also associated with the response topic discussing meaningful activities. Here, we believe that posts describing low motivation garner more responses about behaviors like exercise and hobbies, and finding interests or hobbies also occurs as a suggestion more often to posts that include description of negative feelings. The final protective factor we focus on is the more vague sense of optimism or hope for the future. We focused on response topics that offer sympathetic or hopeful sentiment. Both of these topics had significant associations with the 2 topics to the left. On the left, these topics within the post have negative language and indicate feelings of worthlessness or a negative outlook of the self. The final response topic we analyzed is not a protective factor, but expresses a sense of urgency, which we believe is indicated by instructional phrases like "don't" or "call an ambulance." We believe this topic would occur more frequently in responses to posts that indicate a high-risk situation. Surprisingly, this topic had a significant association with topics within the post that describe college and high school. This tells us that high-risk users are more frequently discussing school, and these associations could hint at the likelihood of students to either post on suicidal forums or to make posts that indicate immediate risk.
Our research gives us a peek into the perspectives of those directly afflicted with severe mental health issues, such as suicidal ideation, as well as how we respond to them. By performing topic modeling and association rule mining, we can learn more about the ways those with this disease speak in a colloquial setting. As you can see here, we can determine topic by topic how likely those with suicidal ideation are to discuss specific issues. In doing this, we can pave the way for further treatments to be done. Treatments can include the creation of a dashboard for moderators of Suicide Watch to identify posts with the most severe language and respond in a way that maximizes the benefit to the user. As more and more individuals struggling with mental health issues turn to social media to express themselves, it is important that we take advantage of this colloquial dataset from the authentic perspective of those directly afflicted by these disorders and the first responders that interact with them. Automatic detection of trends and topics such as these could take multiple directions for improved treatment and understanding of these mental health issues. Thank you.